Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont. Who are you? Do you like Dark Souls 2? Good. That's the topic of today's video, by and large. Indeed, as the thumbnail may have clued you in, along with the title, something I've been thinking about lately, now that Dark Souls 2 is more than 10 years old, does it exist in some sort of mirror world? I'll preface this by saying, if you haven't watched a video I made some years ago called something like Dark Souls Clock Theory, please go and watch that, it's not very long. Or don't, I'm not the police. But the added context may be useful. In essence though, I posited the theory in that video that perhaps Dark Souls operates on a circular timeline. Dark Souls is 12 o'clock, Dark Souls 2 is 6 o'clock, Dark Souls 3 would be 11 o'clock. And I was thinking about how strange Dark Souls 2 is, and yes, the more realistic answer to this, and many things, is just that Dark Souls 2 was a sequel that took steps to distance itself from the first game in some ways, as opposed to Dark Souls 3, which followed far more closely in the first game's footsteps, to the point of recycling NPCs. But you know, it's fun to think about these things. Did the developers? Probably not too much, but one nice thing about games like these is that they leave so many things up for debate, that player imagination steps in to fill in the blanks, whether you like that or not. When I've made lore videos in the past, I often look at things very literally to present facts wherever possible. That said, this video is going to be nonsense. It's going to be all theoretical speculation. It's all supposition today, which lends itself well to Dark Souls 2, which is certainly the odd one out in the trilogy, in just about every way one can imagine. At the start of Dark Souls 2, the player character throws themselves into a vortex that not only has a vague resemblance to the Dark Sign, but existed in a lake that displayed a reflection of something. Another world? The gate to Drang Lake? A mirror world? If we assume for a moment that this lake was the entrance to another world, a mirror world, was our hero leaving the world of Dark Souls into a mirror world of Dark Souls 2? Or was the mirror world they entered that of Dark Souls, of Lordran? The curse certainly exists in both, and we find the Lord Souls and other things from Dark Souls 1 in Dark Souls 2. Looking at it more on a thematic level, you might say the player character lost their family, the melting figures, and then threw themselves into the curse as represented by the water. A bottomless curse, a bottomless sea, accepting of all there is and can be. In other words, the opening cinematic might not be literal, and instead of jumping into a lake, the hero accepts their fate as a hollow, heading to Drang Lake, to either seek souls and a cure, or to simply exist as a feeble, cursed one. Now on the subject of mirror worlds, and very strongly what inspired this video, the nearest confirmed thing we have to that exists in, well, Dark Souls would be of course the Painted World. And now that Nightreign is on the horizon, and the developers seem to have said this is an alternate world of Elden Ring, entering another world through water instead of a painting, well, that's interesting to think about, isn't it? Water plays a strong, yet understated role throughout Dark Souls and Bloodborne, but always in the background, never emphasized. Ash Lake, the Age of the Deep, and the connections between space and the deep sea in Bloodborne, where of course they are significantly stronger. The painter girl needed the dark soul, or the blood of it, as pigment for her painting to create a new world. And the bearer of the curse jumped into a vaguely dark sign vortex. Reaching its straw, as you say? Absolutely. That's the whole point of this video. It's a fun excuse to flex your imagination and share your thoughts down in the comments. Going back to that lake, we see the reflection of a door, and as it opens, spirits and the like spill out, turning from a reflection to reality. You know what else that made me think of? Aside from the throne at the end of the game, it does remind me to the entrance in Elden Ring Nightreign, to the, final boss area. I'm not saying there's a connection here by any means, but Nightreign is an interesting one. Of course, it's a spin-off game, so we don't really need to take the lore super seriously in so many words as all that, but it does confirm that parallel worlds exist, at least in Elden Ring's setting. Nightreign is a parallel world to base Elden Ring, and that opens up a lot of options, such as Dark Souls 2 being a mirror or parallel world to Dark Souls. And then in Dark Souls 3 with the Dread Heap, where you see parts of Dark Souls 2, what, is that just the whole physical universe of Dark Souls collapsing in on itself? Imploding? See, Dark Souls 2 does mirror the first game in some ways, some more blatant than others. Take a look at the gods of Dark Souls 2, for example. The hunting goddess Evlana was no goddess at all, but rather a brave and highly skilled bow huntress. Long after her demise, the passing of Lore transformed her into a deity. You could argue that was just a famed hunter from Lordran, but then we have gods like Kytha, who are associated with items that existed in Dark Souls 1. Is this a passing of lore over time, a development? And what about Queller, the god of dreams, often associated with a spirit tree? Obviously Elden Ring wasn't a thing back then, and trees are very common in mythos and lore, but retroactively, sure, you could look at that as being a hint to Elden Ring. Perhaps a god of dreams, often connected to stars, being in some way related to the Erd Tree and the Elden Beast, if you want to think of it that way. Were they thinking of Elden Ring when they made Dark Souls 2? Probably not, but you never know. Outside of gods, you have certain characters who, in a way, can be seen as mirrors of those in Dark Souls. Rame and Artorias, for example. Some reflections are more exact than others, such as Pate and Patches. Others are merely visual or thematically similar. Nightreign opened up a lot of interesting notions in regards to the Souls games operating on multiple worlds, perhaps in a shared universe. And to reiterate, yes, at the end of the day, this is backfilling lore to justify gameplay, which is alright sometimes. And on that note, what do you think about Dark Souls 2, parallel worlds, mirror worlds, Nightreign, and so on?
It's a human effigy. Take a closer look. Who do you think it's supposed to be? Think back, deep into your past. Yes, it's an effigy of you.